Om Shuklam Baradharam Vishnum Shashibharnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarvabhignopashantaye Saraswati Namastubhyam Varadhe Kamarupini Vidyarambham karishyami siddhir me sada yena akshara samamnayam adhigamya maheshwarat kritsnam vyakaranam proktam tasmai paninaye namaha vakyakaram vararuchim Bhashyakaram Patanjalim Paninim Sutrakarancha Pranatosmi Munitrayam Vagarthaviva Sampriktau Vagarthah Pratipattaye Jagatah Pitarau Vande Parvati Parameshwarau Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. Namaste, welcome. We're looking at Yushmad and Asmad Shabdas. Interestingly, the Brahma Sutra introductory Bhashyam, what we call Adhyasa Bhashyam, starts with the words Yushmad and Asmad. Yushmad Asmad Pratyayoho. So Brahma Sutra starts with Yushmad and Asmad, you and I. Just an interesting tidbit. What we'll do is I want to chant what chant our Maheshwara Sutra. Can chant it together. Om A-I Un Rilik E-Ong I-Ouch Haya-Varatha Lang Nyama-Gananam Jabhanya Ghadadash Jabagadash Kapha-Chathatha Chathatav Kapai Shahasar Hal Iti Maheshwarani Sutrani. One more thing that we want to chant, and we're going to start chanting weekly, is when we talk about, right, starting from the beginning, we know that there's two types of words, right? Tingantam and Subanthum. So Tingantam is made up of, made up of Dhatu plus Ting Pratyaya, a suffix, specifically the Ting type of suffix. And then we have nouns. Nouns are called Subanthum. So Subanthum are made up of Pratipadikam plus Sup Pratyaya. So what you'll see on the board are Sup Pratyaya. All the 21 suffixes that we add to a Pratipadika to make a noun. So you notice that you see that it starts with Su at the first case singular, Su. And then you see this seventh case plural, Sup, with the Pa. So starting from Su and ending with Pa, that's why it's called Sup Pratyaya. So su and then pa, so soup. So if I say soup, it counts for all 21 of these suffixes. So this is a shorthand way of saying all these 21 suffixes. Now, this becomes more important when we come to halanta, so hal ending, consonant ending pratipadikas. When we come to consonant ending pratipadikas, this chart becomes more relevant to us, because what we'll see is the when we're talking about consonant ending, then we just take the pratipadika and generally we just add these as they are. We just add them as they are. So they will be soon, very soon, maybe next class, we will get to halanta pratipadika, hal ending pratipadika, so consonant ending pratipadika. So we are going to need to know these 21 suffixes. These are also added to vowel ending pratipadika, but the vowel ending pratipadika undergo a lot of changes, and so they're a little bit more irregular. So, for example, Rama, right? Rama 3-1. It doesn't become Rama. I don't add ta. Ta, I don't add that. It's Ramena, right? So totally different, because there's some rules that come in place of these 21 pratipadikas. So scanning this chart, what we need to know is there's something called it letters. There's it letters that are added mostly for chanting purposes, and they were helpful for when they denote things that are beyond our scope. So some of these letters, for example, if you look at su, that nasalized is only there because it's going to tell you a specific swara to chant it in, or it's going to tell us something about where it's located, for example. But it doesn't give us much more information than that. If you see su o just jakara is an it letter. We remove that. It's removed. So it just becomes us. O chas ta becomes just a, bhyam bis, nye just becomes a, etc., etc. So what I want to point out is that there's some letters in here that will be removed when we're finally adding them. And we'll see that more in our next class. I'm just making a samskara, an impression. What we're going to do is we're going to chant this every class so that this becomes in our memory. Okay? So you can repeat after me. Su o jas ot shas ta bhyam bhis nge bhyam bhyas ngasi bhyam bhyas ngas os ni os sup. Okay, now you can chant it one more time with me. Su o jas ot shas ta bhyam bis nge bhyam, bhyas, ngasi, bhyam, bhyas, ngas, os, ni, os, soup. Okay. So if you have questions about this, hold this for the next class because we're going to be looking at it more then, maybe at the end of this class as well. So we'll see. Now we can flip open our book, going back to our Pratipadika, to page 124. So we finish Ashmad and Yushmad, sorry, Asmad and Yushmad. Now we're going to something called Anvadesha, which is on page 124, called Anvadesha. So it should look exactly like this. What's on your screen? Anvadesha. So Anvadesha is a term for repetition, essentially. When I'm referring to the same object again, when I'm referring to something again, it's called Anvadesha. And we see this particularly with idam and etad at this time. So when one object is mentioned for conveying something, then again, that same object is mentioned for conveying something else. That mentioning of the same object for the second time is called Anvadesha in grammatical terminology. So this idam and etad when they're used in Anvadesha, they have different forms. In the second case, 3-1, 6-2, and 7-2. Okay, so what is Anvadesha? Basically, let's say I want to refer to something. Let's say like I want to talk about Devadatta. Okay, I want to talk about Devadatta. So Devadatta, I refer to him and I call him first. I call him by his name, Devadatta, because you don't know who he is. Now, after establishing Devadatta, I may use idam purushaha, this person, right? Idam purushaha. I can say this person, because we know who Devadatta is. Now I can use a pronoun instead of using Devadatta. Now I said idam. Now if I use idam one more time, maybe in the same sentence or a different sentence, so I'm using idam for a second time. Now I'm telling you, now this is still referring to Devadatta, but it's telling me something different about Devadatta. Right? So I can use idam once to refer to Devadatta, but if I use it again, idam, then that second time is what we call Anvadesha. Okay, so using something for the second time or referring, using that idam or etad for a second time. And it's not only 2 times, it can be multiple times. Then that's what we're calling Anvadesha. When I use idam or etad multiple times to refer to the same object, then they're going to take different forms. So you'll see these forms here. So let me give you an example before we look at the form. Let me show you an example. Okay. So this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. Now, we talk about Atma a lot in the Bhagavad Gita. And that Atma or Brahman will be referred as Idam or Etat. But now, because we talk about it so many times, Bhagavan Krishna uses the Anvdea form. You see, anam. Huh? Let's see, I think it's frozen. You see that form, anam. Anam is the Anvdea form. Enam veti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam ubhoto navajanitah nayam hanti nanyate. So you see here, right? Enam, it's referring to Atma. And because we've seen idam used for Atma before. So this is idam shabdasya anvadeshaha. You see that there. This is the second time that multiple reference shabdasya of the word idam. Anvadesha is that alternate form of the pronoun idam and etad, which has been used in one sentence and again used in another sentence. So here, instead of using the normal form of idam or etad, Bhagavan Krishna has now used enam, which is the Anvadesha form. So let's look at those forms, and we'll come back to some other Gita verses. Okay. So notice how there's only these forms. Let's see if this works. Okay. There's only these forms. This different form is only in second case, 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, 3-1, 6-2, and 7-2. So there's not a whole different chart. Okay, just a few places. So you can repeat after me. Enam, eno, enan, enena, and then 6-2, 7-2, enayoho, enayoho. So this is just in masculine that it looks like this. So just to remind you, when we look at, remember etad, let's quickly remember the chart for etad, because this is we use this instead of etad when we're referring to it multiple times. So eshaha, eto, ete, etam, eto, etan, etena, etabhyam, etaihi, etasmai, etabhyam, etebhyah. You can say with me, etasmat, etabhyam, etebhyah, etasya, etayoho, etesham, etasmin, etayoho, eteshu. So now look at, instead of saying etam, I'm saying enam. So instead of the takara, you get a nakara, essentially. Okay, it doesn't say that anywhere, but it's declined like ena. So instead of see the takara, you'll see a nakara. So instead of etam, we have enam. Instead of eto, we have eno. Instead of etan, we have enan. Instead of etena, we have enena. And instead of etayoho, we have enayoho. Now, a little bit of a tricky thing is that when you, this also is a different form, or is the Anvadesha for idam, right? Now, idam doesn't look much like what this Anvadesha form is. So if you look at the second case, so let's just remember this, right? Ayam, imo, ime. And second case, imam, imo, iman becomes enam, eno, enan. Okay, so it's not as simple as going from etad to this Anvadesha, but the same thing. It's the same forms for both idam and etad. So I hope that makes sense. So when I refer to idam multiple times, instead of imam, I'll get enam. Instead of imo, I'll get eno. Instead of iman, I'll get enan. Instead of anena, I'll get enena. Instead of anayoho, I get enayoho. Okay, that's in masculine. Now, so here's so many places in Bhagavad Gita that we get this enam. Right? They say this soul, they're referring to Atma, but there's all these places in Bhagavad Gita. There's more places than this. I didn't get the full printout of this, but here's some places. So for example, when you see, now we saw verses 19, now you have verse 23. Nainam chintanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayantyapaha, na shoshayati marutaha. Na enam. Enam is referring to this Atma. It's idam, but Anvadesha form of idam. It's the Anvadesha form. We've seen idam refer to Atma before, but now we're using it again to refer to the same object. So now I can use enam when I'm in the second case. So there's a question in the chat. Since idam and etad are masculine, is there a place where we use idam instead of etad? I assume the question is, can we use them interchangeably? And so we can't necessarily, oftentimes they're used almost interchangeably, but we often remember this, that there's a general sense of proximity. So when I'm talking about something closer, I use etad, then something slightly farther away, but still close by, I would use idam. So they're not necessarily interchangeable, but this rule is not stuck by very closely, right? Sometimes you use etad and idam almost similarly. But this is the general rule, what you see on the screen. Now, with that, we also want to know that these are not optional forms for idam and etad. Okay, what we mean by that is you can't just decide when you want to use Anvadesha. It's only when you're referring to that same, you're using that pronoun for the second or third or fourth time, and it has to refer to the same object that you did in the first time. Okay, so using idam or etad multiple times, and it's referring to the same object that you did in the first time. Then you can use Anvdea. But it's not apne ap. It's not you do whatever you want. Okay, now here's idam and etad in neuter, right? So let's look at, we'll look at the cases that are relevant, right? Etad. So this chart of etad is the same as masculine, just these first two are different. Right? Instead of eshaha, you have etat or etad. Okay, so the and remember, we just replaced that dakara with nakara. It's essentially like that, right? We decline like ena. So instead of etat or etad, we have enat or enad. And instead of ete, we have ene. And then etani, enani. Okay, so let's chant that first two cases of etad together. Etad, okay? Etad, etad, ete, etani. Etad, ete, etani. So then this is enat, ene, enani. Similar to jnanam, jnane, jnanani. Similar, yeah. And now, right, remember, an idam in Napumsaka looks like this. Idam, ime, imani. Idam, ime, imani. So that second case, idam, ime, imani, will then, when I'm using Anvdea, then these will be used. Instead of idam, ime, imani, I'm going to use enat, ene, enani. Okay. And now we have to look at feminine. Okay, let's look at etad in feminine. Esha, ete, etaha. Etam, ete, etaha. And then we have, so then you want to look at the third case. Etaya, etabhyam, etabhihi. Etasyai, etabhyam, etabhyaha. Sorry, you can't see that very clearly. Etasyaha, etabhyam, etabhyaha. Etasyaha, etayoho, etasam. Etasyam, etayoho, etasu. Sorry, etam, we have, notice how it's ena, okay? There's no makara. So instead of etam, we have ena. Okay, that's a slight difference in what we've seen before with the other two genders. It ends with akara, so ena. Even in 2-1, instead of ete, we have ene. Etaha, we have enaha. Etaya, we have enaya. Etayoho, we have enayoho. Looking at idam in feminine. Let's chant this together. Iyam, ime, imaha. Imam, ime, imaha. Anaya, abhyam, abhihi. Asyai, abhyam, abhyaha. Asyaha, abhyam, abhyaha. Asyaha, anayoho, asam. Asyam, anayoho asu. So it's not instead of, but when I'm using Anvadesha, imam, we ena, ime, ene, imaha, enaha, anaya, enaya, anayoho, we enayoho. 6272. So we see a lot of 2-1 anam in Bhagavad Gita. You don't see a lot of, I couldn't find many references for any of the other ones. I don't know if it's because we use the second case more in Bhagavad Gita when you're referring to Atma, but I couldn't find, I'm sure there are other references. I couldn't find many other besides using anam. So you'll see anam a lot. More than the others, it seems like, at least from the Bhagavad Gita. Here's some other verses that I pulled. Veda vinashinam nityam yaenam ajam avyayam katam sapurushav partha kam gatayati hantikam. So before today, you might have think, what is anam? Shivamji never taught me that. He's out of here. Now you know. Enam can be a reference to etad or idam. So we see that. Yaha enam, which is idam anvadesha, referring to this atma. Okay, so here are some verses that I pulled, but there's a few other that you can see on your own as well. But you'll see anam quite a bit. Okay, does anybody have any questions before we wrap up with this? I can't see your hands raised, so just put a question mark in the chat or use the raise hand function on Zoom. Har Prasadji, if you have a question. Oh, sorry, I have to unmute you one more time.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah. This translation you have done with the Samskrita words, is this your own?
This Bhagavad Gita?
Yeah, here, like, yeah, yad, enam, idam, all this, vetis, nos.
I'm not going to take credit for this. This is, again, Meda Michikaji has done the whole, not the whole Bhagavad Gita, but I think up to chapter 6, grammatical analysis.
I see. Is it published?
It's published on Arsha Avinash.
Okay.
So you can find it there.
Okay.
When we study Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, I will also send this out as well.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, so it's very nice how gone through all of each of the words.
Dhanyawadaha.
Of course. Okay, so in our next class, we will start looking at halanta pratipadika, so consonant ending pratipadikas, which means we're near the end of the book, which is, yeah, a big deal. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. We'll come back at 8:10.